Welcome to Sweden in New York and the Swedish residence, my home. I'm the Consul General Annika Rembe, and I will ask Ida, our house manager, to show you around.
Hi, I am Ida. Let me show you around. This palace was designed by architect James Gamble Rogers and built in early 1910s by Jonathan Bulkley. It's the only remaining single-family house on Park Avenue today. The design is British-influenced Italian Renaissance, and these rooms are used for mingling, seminars, dinners, and other gatherings to promote Swedish innovation, business, and culture.
In this room, we have hosted many different kinds of events over the years. From the Nobel Prize ceremony to hosting ministers, royalties, businessmen, artists, and many other notable persons. But also have done roundtables, seminars, and actually catwalks.
This is the library. Most designs here are from the Swedish interior design company Svenskt, a company with a strong sustainability philosophy. This couch, for instance, is created by Josef Frank, a prolific designer who fled anti-Semitism in Austria for Sweden. This painting is created by renowned Swedish artist Karsten Riegel. And in this room, we host more intimate lunches. The vases are made out of recycled glass from Costa Glassworks by young Swedish designer Mimmi Blomqvist. Sustainability is a focus in everything we do, and of course it includes the food we serve to our guests.
My name is Simon Hoas. I'm the executive chef here at the Swedish Consulate. Our goal here in the residence kitchen is zero waste. I'm lowering our carbon footprint by reusing ingredients from one dish into something new and exciting. I'm using local produce, and we also have our own rooftop where we grow greens and vegetables and herbs.
Design Diplomacy is a series of conversation events that take place in diplomatic residencies all around the world. Two designers get together and have this deck of cards in which playful yet intelligent questions challenge the players as well as the audience to consider design as a form of intercultural exchange. How it works is that we build international links for diplomatic representations, design professionals, as well as audiences. The Design Diplomacy was created by Helsinki Design Week. That was 5 years ago, and ever since then, we've played Design Diplomacy card games in over 20 residencies around Helsinki every year in September. Additionally, these conversation events have taken place in Reykjavik, Tokyo, in New York, in Madrid, Oslo, Berlin, as well as Canberra. We at Helsinki Design Week and in Weekly, we believe in international cooperation and in the possibility to change the world through meaningful encounters and interactions. Sometimes all you need is a deck of cards. Incidentally, the word diploma derives from a Greek word that means a paper folded in two.
Dear friends, welcome to the Swedish residence at 600 Park Avenue and Nordic Design Diplomacy edition 2021. I'm Annika Rembe, the Consul General of Sweden in New York. This year, and actually every year, sustainability will be in focus for a conversation on design. And I'm particularly happy to have with me today Claudine Eriksson and Anna Burkhardt. And I will need to read about them because their CVs are very important. Anna Burkhardt is a curator and writer from Bogota, Colombia. As a curatorial assistant at the Museum of Modern Art, Department of Architecture and Design, she has worked on exhibitions such as Neri Oxman, Material Ecology and Energy, among others. And Claudine Eriksson is a graphic designer and art director from Sweden who works at the intersection of design and illustration. She has worked for Pentagram, The High Line, Rizzoli, Taschen, Vogue Italia, Prada, and New York Times, among others. So with that, I'm very happy to leave the fireside to Claudine and Anna.
Hi, I'm Claudine. It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Claudine. I'm Anna.
I think I'm going to draw the first question for you.
Go for it.
Why is it important to talk about design?
That's a big question. I guess the way in which we approach design at my work at MOMA is with the idea that really everything around us is design, right? Even from our genetic makeup to the infrastructures and the systems that surround us. So it's important to be aware of that because if we're not, then we can get into a lot of trouble.
Very true.
Did you choose your profession or did it choose you?
Ooh, good question. I think everything I enjoyed as a child kind of ended up being graphic design without me knowing it. So I used to really love photography, and I used to love to draw, and I used to save all the little candy boxes. The Swedish old candy boxes are really beautiful. And even little tags and labels that had certain print or color on it, and I just used to collect these things, and I didn't really know what it would accumulate to, but all my interests were formed into graphic design. So I think it kind of chose me.
Yeah, you're lucky. That's great.
I'll draw another question for you. Ooh, which book should every designer read?
Oh, I guess my first thought, but I think if I had a little bit more time to think about it, I might have other ideas. But my first thought is Alice Rawsthorne's Hello World, When Design Meets Life. It's a wonderful book that really sort of like speaks to the importance of design on everyday life and really helps us understand that everything around us really is design. Through also just very accessible language and in a very smart way. So for example, one of the things that she talks about in the book is how even dog breeding is of course something that was designed and how if we don't really understand our own responsibility as humans and as designers, we can do a lot of harm to other species. And so it's a really sort of like expansive way of looking at design. So I would recommend it.
Oh, wow, I haven't read it. I have to read this.
I wonder what your answer would be to that.
Well, I have to say, I think everyone should read a book about typography, and Ellen Lipton has a really good kind of basics of typography. Since I took my first typography class, I can't see the world in the same way as I did before, and I think we all work with type on an everyday basis, no matter what job you have or what work you do. And how we communicate using typography is almost like a second language to all languages. So I think we should all read a book about typography.
Yeah, I agree. I actually own, as a non-designer, because I really didn't study it, I own Ellen Lipton's book, and it's incredibly helpful. And I think I fully agree with you. It's sort of like a tool that we all should understand.
Absolutely.
Okay, me, right?
Yes.
So what has been your favorite project?
What has been my favorite project? I can mention a project that I think that you're familiar with, which is a book called Low Tech, written by Julia Watson. And it's a beautiful book and project that she has been collecting and researching about for many, many years. And me and my design partner, Piera Wolf, were able to kind of visualize and bring all of this amazing content to life through Taschen, who published a book. And it's really just a lot of knowledge and wisdom of all these indigenous communities on how we use natural resources to live more sustainably. And I think it's a very current topic. It's extremely important right now, and it's ancient wisdom that could be utilized right now and is equally important and equally efficient now as it was when it was invented. And that project taught me a lot, and it was also a challenging project to get all of this information into a visual and printed format. And we used illustration and all of her content and research, and kind of created a format where you could digest and dive into all of this amazing knowledge and wisdom.
I would actually love to hear more about just the process of designing it, because, you know, indeed, as you said, it's a really timely topic, and I think a lot of us working in design now are kind of thinking about how, you know, what has been the responsibility of design in sort of like the environmental crisis that we're currently facing, and how we can sort of like change the definition of design to make it one that perhaps doesn't center the human, and instead centers other species in the environment, and that perhaps a kind of decolonial way of looking at design. And I'm wondering if that was something that you kept in mind through your sort of design process. You know, one thing that I was thinking when I was looking at the book is, are there sort of like different indigenous systems that look at the grid differently, or are these types of things things that you kept into account when designing?
Yes and no, because we really wanted it to be, didn't want to add an extra layer of information, because there's so much information through the content itself. But we really tried to read the entire content and understand how there was similarities in some of the different tribes and their systems. So the book is divided into 4 different sections that speak to the common denominator, so wetlands, for example, or mountains, and then they're grouped based on their location and also their elevation in the world. So,
beautiful.
Yeah, so as you go through the book, you can tell the elevation, and there's these little visual signatures that come throughout that help explain the content, but we also didn't want to add extra layers because there's so much information in it.
It's already so complex.
Exactly,
Yeah.
It's very complex, but we did a color coordination system that speaks to the colors found in the environment of each area.
That's beautiful.
And then we use this copper color, like a copper PMS, which is a nod to back in the day when people would gild something in a bronze or metal to make that knowledge or that item have added value. So something that might not have been a precious object, but it still is valuable, was gilded or had a copper finish. So that is also a tiny detail that comes throughout the book, which is a little nod to that.
That's amazing. It's a great book. I'm very happy to hear about it.
Thank you for asking about it. I'd love to talk about it. Let's see. What has inspired you recently?
Oh man, I guess one thing that I watched recently, and I'm always kind of ashamed to say that I watched it recently because it's an old movie that's, I always feel like people are going to tell me like, oh, you're only watching it now, but it's called Ghost in a Shell. It's a Japanese movie from 1995, and it really kind of, you know, it's about this cyborg kind of detective who realizes that this hacker has sort of like invaded her soul. And it really, you know, we recently, as part of sort of some of the work that we've been doing at MOMA, in particular a podcast that we'll launch next week in conjunction with an exhibition called Broken Nature, we've been thinking about really the body and how the body is a designed system and how it might need to change if we really want to survive climate change in the future, right? How the planet is of course changing, and with that our bodies. And so I'm really interested in the idea of the cyborg and how eventually, or actually not even eventually, right now our bodies really are kind of becoming those of cyborgs for many reasons, because we're filled with plastic, because we are constantly interacting with different interfaces. So it was a really interesting sort of perspective to have, just because I was already thinking of those themes. And I would recommend the movie. It's really great if you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it. I wish I did. Oh.
Okay, I'll go for it.
I want to hear more about the exhibition too at some point.
So what do you wish you had designed yourself?
Ooh. Wow, that is a big question. I mean, I have to say the bicycle, I think, because the bicycle is just genius, and it's still equally functioning when it was designed as it is now, and it's kind of a thing of the future as well for transportation. And yeah, I would say the bicycle. Plus, they're just beautiful objects, and they last a long time, and they're an experiential, they're universal.
I think that's a really good answer. And you're right, it is, I mean, as we would say, it's just a good design.
Yeah, exactly. What skills did your grandparents have that you're jealous of?
Oh, I was recently just thinking about how my grandmother is just so good with numbers.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not. She's really great. Is one of those people that have been working since she's 13, and now she's 84 and she's still working at just as much.
Oh, wow.
And she's very organized, which I think I also am, but in a different way. And so she's just like really careful with her finances and just really good with numbers and can make calculations really quickly. And as I get older, I feel like that's a skill that it's great to have. So it's a boring answer, but that's my answer.
That's very sweet. Is she in Colombia still?
Yes, she is. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
How about you?
From grandparents,
yes.
I have to say my grandmother, Carmencita, she is an amazing interior design savvy woman and has monochrome rooms in her house that uses the same kind of patterning in the wallpaper as in the curtains, and it's completely over the top and fantastic and bold and brave, and I wish I had that sense of space interior design.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, but it seems it runs in the family. You've got something from her for sure.
I hope so.
Me, okay,
yep.
Sorry. How do you start your day?
Oh. Well, that actually recently changed because I became a mother a few months ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you so much. So I now start my day with a little face massage for my 9-month-old who wakes me up, and then with a cup of black tea is crucial.
That sounds like a good way to start the day.
Yeah. And you?
Congratulations also.
Thank you.
I start my day by snoozing a few times, I have to admit, and then probably just getting straight in the shower, because if not, I will not get out of bed.
Yeah, I have to do that too. I don't wake up otherwise.
Yeah, exactly.
My turn. Talk about one memorable compliment that you've received from your work.
Oh, wow. Well, just yesterday, actually, seems not memorable, but it really marked me. So I work with this amazing woman called Paola Antonelli. She's incredibly charming and such a good public speaker, and I've always said that I really admire that about her. And just recently, she told me that I was really charming when I presented, and so to me, that was just the ultimate compliment.
That's fantastic. Wow.
She's really wonderful. I'm lucky to work with her. Yeah, I don't want to break the cycle too much, but I also want to ask you about yours.
Oh, wow. Tricky also. I guess more how it makes people feel. It's not a specific compliment, but if something evokes an emotion, like that brought me a lot of joy, or this made me think about a memory that I had, or I don't know, something that really evokes an emotion, is always really fantastic when we design something and people feel something.
That's the best you could hope for. Okay. Give a piece of advice you wish someone had told you.
Oh, wow. I guess someone did tell me, but it took me a while to sink in. And they told me in kind of a convoluted way. It was one of my teachers a long time ago when I went to Parsons, who always would reframe the brief, and I felt like they weren't, I could never manage to deliver what they wanted. And the end result from that was that I learned to always exceed the expectations. So whatever someone asks of you, always rephrase that and over-deliver. My design partners are not super happy with that because it's not always so efficient. But over-deliver, under-promise and over-deliver is a good
like that.
learning,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and also go with what you feel like you need to do, which it seems like it's what you were doing all along.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Good for you.
I'll take one. Why do you want to work with design?
That's a hard one. I guess the reason why I started working with design, and I really came to it not from the sort of like traditional background. My undergrad was in law, and then so it was kind of circuitous. But the reason why I chose design was because I've always been really intrigued with the way people relate to objects. So, you know, even before I actually got into doing proper design, I was kind of interested in materiality and material culture and how it means to sort of like live with objects or interact with objects. And at first I didn't really know that could eventually translate into design. I was sort of like looking at it from more of an academic perspective and kind of anthropological, and then I actually realized that, you know, that as I've said perhaps 3 times already, design is really all around us, and it's something that we all sort of like live with, and it can really help us shape the way we think, or change even the way we think, and change the world in a very specific way. So I just very late realized that that's really what made the most sense for me, but it took me a while. I had to, you know, take a few steps before I got to design.
How did you jump from law to design?
I mean, it's a long answer. I don't want to waste all of our time, but I was interested in fashion because of that, because it's something that, you know, we live in, and it's almost sort of a part of our bodies, and it really says so much about us. And so I decided that I wanted to kind of study that a little bit, and I ended up at NYU at a program called Visual Culture that really allowed me to look at design and fashion through an anthropological lens, through a sort of like more sociological lens, and I loved it. And so I was kind of lucky to end up at a place that lets me do that, because really, you know, that's what I think curating design is, sort of like looking at these objects and understanding that they have a socio-economic, historical impact that we all should be aware of.
Absolutely, yeah. And your work, or the department that you work for, it really shows in the work. I think it lives and breathes that all is design.
Yeah, exactly. I think I feel very lucky to work there. It's a nice place, and I really did not plan it, so it's nice to have ended up there.
Good spot to end up in.
Okay, so I'll go. Has your parents' taste affected you?
Oh, wow.
A deep one.
Yeah. Yes. So, my mom is Swedish, and my stepdad is German-Swedish, but he's a glam rocker, covered in tattoos and lots of leather and leopard, and very bold and unexpected. And my mom is very minimal, a little bit hippie-ish, but likes, simplicity. And I think that definitely that juxtaposition of her simplicity and his kind of maximum approach to stick out and be different has definitely influenced my work more than I like to admit, maybe.
I mean, they sound so cool, so great.
I want to ask you the same question too.
Yes, definitely.
May I?
Yeah,
Yes.
Sure. My dad is an architect, and my mom was a textile designer. So I feel like,
oh wow, yeah.
I kind of feel like my dad was a little bit disappointed when I chose law. He was just like, "What are you doing?" And it took me, you know, again, I was a little bit of a late bloomer, but now I really realize that their sensitivities and sort of like their attention to design and to sort of like the visual was so fundamental for me. And it kind of like, I guess unlike you, I really didn't listen to what I needed when I was younger, and it took me a while, but now as an adult, I realized that they really shaped my interest and my sensitivities.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
Okay. Has your aesthetics changed over the past 10 years?
Yes, I would hope so.
I hope so too.
Yes, I would say yes, and just leave it at that. How about you?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There's some things that still remain that are the same, but a lot of it has changed, which is why I never get a tattoo, because I'm afraid I'll regret it, or that my tastes will change.
Same. I share that. Okay. Who do you create for?
Ooh. Also a very good question. I I would have to say I create for the client and for the user. So a designer is maybe takes the background, I think, or that's important to me in design, that we are the vessel, or we are the translator, or we are the liaison between the person who originated something or has a vision, the client, and the person who will end up using it. Sometimes we are even the users ourselves. But I think it's important that I'm not designing for myself, I'm designing for somebody else, and hopefully I find it really important to choose clients and work based on what the end usage will be, so something that affects the world and people in a positive way.
Yeah, and I guess it's also thinking that, you know, if it's a good design, anybody could use it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Like
the bicycle.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost
But
like.
I guess that's sort of like the difficult and important thing about being a designer, that you hope that in the future, whatever you design will sort of like be as accessible as possible and be sort of like as usable for everybody as possible.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, big question. What is your utopia?
Oof. That's really hard, and I also feel like even the term utopia is just so kind of like loaded with meaning. I really tend to avoid those terms, but I guess if we are talking about design, just to keep it focused, because if not, it's just going to be huge. I do think that design, because it has had such a sort of, it's so tied to kind of industrialization, and so tied to the Industrial Revolution, design really has a and designers have a responsibility to understand the sort of impact that design has had over the past 100 years. And in many ways that also means really redesigning design and rethinking it. And I think one of the sort of like futures that I hope for design is that it will not only center the human, that it will center other species and sort of like just nature in general. What do you consider the biggest challenge that humankind needs to solve?
Oh, wow.
Another big one.
Even bigger. How long do we have?
I know, that's hard.
Maybe to be more thoughtful in everything that we do, everything that we consume and make and interact. And yeah, I think we just need to put more thought and be more thoughtful in how we live our lives and how we make a stamp, like what sort of footprint we leave, and hopefully that is not a lot, but yeah, I think we all need to be just way more thoughtful, and by thoughtful that also means doing the work and
Yeah, that's a good question.
learning and changing and being, it's really it's a loaded question, but
it's a really good answer. I like this idea of sort of like being mindful of the footprint that you leave behind, and it's like it should be minimal in terms of material footprint, but it can be larger if it's something different. So that's nice.
Maybe a lighter question. Let's see. What will you change in the city where you currently live?
What would I change? I guess one thing that I do wish would change is sort of like this this association of like being busy and being productive with being successful. I think it's something that was really hard for me when I first moved to New York, to just sort of like understand why people were just not only constantly running and constantly doing things, but also feeling like they needed to be constantly busy. And I do feel like that's kind of like a little bit of a capitalist lie, and I hope that we all change our mindset a bit and realize that we don't need to be busy all the time.
And what is busy really?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a hard thing to change. I think it's very...
I had a friend who once got really angry with me for saying that I'm busy, and she said, you have to explain it to me, what does busy mean to you, and learning to articulate what that means just makes it more manageable in a way.
I
find
like that.
It's not a constant state of busy, but it's rather, I'm a little overwhelmed because I have
this thing to
this
do.
thing to do, and then you can check it off your list and be less busy.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I might start applying it to my life. What makes you get out of bed in the morning?
What makes me get out of bed? I mean, I love what I do in terms of design and therefore overwork a little bit, but I jump out of bed in the morning excited to work with all the people that I work with. I have 2 fantastic design partners, one in Zurich, whose name is Piera Wolf, and then I have one here in New York, Andrea Johansson, and yeah, I just love waking up in the morning and starting to work with them remotely. Yeah, I'll have another one for you. What would you say to a person who says the world doesn't need more objects?
That they're right. I mean, I think as you were saying, I think it's thinking about sort of like what the, I think not just as designers, just as people, it's important to think about whether that object really needs to exist. Is it sort of like bringing something important that does not exist to the world? And if it does, how do we create it in a way that has the least footprint environmentally, that is the most accessible for all humans and other species perhaps? So just really being careful and being really mindful about what are the objects that we're sort of creating and bringing into the world.
I agree. Is it my turn?
Oh no, it's my turn, I'm sorry.
Can I still ask you? Can we
Yes,
switch
go for
over?
it. Yes.
What is your favorite material?
Oh my God. My favorite material, it's going to be a really boring answer, but I really love cotton.
Yeah.
It's really breathable. It's great for any season. It's great for underwear. So not the most creative answer. What about you? You're the designer, so it should be really for you.
I love paper. I have to say there's so much you can do with paper. It's not always the most environmentally friendly to produce, but I love paper.
Yeah. And I mean, I should say that also cotton has very, very loaded, histories, and so let's not get into that, but paper is okay. Complete the sentence. The biggest challenge in my career.
I would say it's not that straightforward. I would say there's not one challenging thing. It's more nuanced.
No, I understand. It's a hard question. I don't know how I would answer it, to be honest, either.
Right? It's a big one. Maybe the challenges also are opportunities, depending on how you see them. So I'll say skip. Do you prefer to work alone or together?
I would say, I think both. It really depends on the type of work. I think I'm lucky that the work that I do is both. Like, it requires a lot of sort of like solitary kind of like writing type of work and intellectual work, and at the same time it involves a lot of logistical work. And in the end, weirdly, I end up sometimes even enjoying the logistical work a bit more because I get to work with so many amazing people at MOMA. So, usually particularly when I'm installing and I get to work with the art handlers and the registrars and exhibition designers, that's really when it's the most fun. So I think both, it just depends. How about you?
Depends on the project. I would say the same. I love to kind of isolate and work on something alone for longer periods of time also, but this exchange that I have with these 2 fantastic women who are my design partners is fantastic because I can't somehow what we can create together, and that ping pong, as we call it, of going back and forth and even articulating the ideas, although we have to do something visually, oftentimes just articulating it to someone else helps it become more solidified in my own mind. So I like a combination of both.
Me too. How international is your job?
Very international. So I work a lot with people in Europe and here, and as I mentioned, but the one design partner, Piera, is in Zurich right now, and she We worked remotely before the pandemic, so we were used to kind of working at a distance, and yeah, really good. We had a head start into that, and I love it because the people that are in both places, or the clients or the projects, vary a lot, and the culture in which we work varies even more. So this kind of melting pot of different cultures and different projects is fantastic. So it's very, very global, I would say, very international.
That's amazing. And I guess the pandemic has also shown that like we could all be working like that without having to like travel and like have as much footprint on the environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
I want to say thank you so much for this talk today. It was so nice to meet you.
You as well. Thank you so much for being so candid with your answers, and it was so enjoyable.
You too.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Claudine, for such a great conversation. And thank you all, viewers and listeners, to have stayed with us today. I hope that you have found it inspiring and that it might have given you thoughts to bring forward in these interesting days. We'll stay in touch.